That's right. Hello and welcome everyone to Rally FC. That's right, the Ghostwriter podcast here on the Flying Cow. That's right, the Ghostwriter podcast. The podcast everyone was screaming for me to make. At least all the people inside of my head. Anyway, but I'm not going to be doing this alone. So I'm going to introduce my very special guest, Karen Murphy. How are we doing today, Karen?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Obviously we've had a few technical difficulties over here, but we're pushing through.
We are. If you can hear me, we've got him taken care of.
Right? Yeah, we're doing good. We can hear each other now. We're rolling on all cylinders, folks.
This is high quality podcasting at its best.
Well, I aim for professionalism as much as I can. I have to ask you a question. It's a question I ask all of my guests. Very important question.
Of course.
So, Karen, how much do you hate me for asking you to watch this show?
It's been an interesting process because I am older than you.
Sure.
So I have no cognizance of this from my own childhood. Like the name is familiar, but nothing else much about it. What was really fascinating was putting myself back into the place of being a kid watching like Saturday morning cartoons and some of those live action shows and that kind of stuff that as you get older, you're like, wow, if I had not watched this and had fondness for it as a kid, I would never be interested in it.
Yeah.
So I tried to put myself back in that position and, to a great extent, it kind of worked. And then it was really interesting because I think I had some thoughts about it in general about, kind of like an educational show as opposed to a show that is just about story and ratings and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it's, it actually kind of passes the 2020 test in terms of not punching down, not making fun of people because of their qualities, unless it is truly a show point.
Right.
But, people don't get into fights saying, you're so annoying, or why do you do this? Or, all the things that you see in other shows.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of refreshing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. This type of show is its own animal. But it's something that we bring up a lot. But comparatively, especially when you compare it to a lot of the other things that were coming out during this time, this is a very progressive, definitely diverse show.
Very diverse. And I love that. In some ways, I was thinking about kind of that target audience because the age range of the actors is not the target audience that they are going for. You're talking about 5 to 6 years younger. This is for kids.
Well,
in some ways, it feels like a stepped up Sesame Street in terms of its educational focus. It has diversity, but it makes it feel really natural. As it should be.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say it's for that step after Sesame Street.
Yes.
But, I was only 2 to 3 years younger than the kids making this program, and I was watching it, consuming it. Of course.
Yeah, maybe that 2 to 3 years.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, I like I've said many times, I loved this show when I was a kid watching it. Now I'm like, this is pretty silly. But, then there are parts that I'm like, it's not amazing, but it's not bad for what it was.
Hey, I have gone back and I have watched Land of the Lost again.
Oh, wow.
It does not hold up.
Yeah.
None of those shows hold up the way that you remember them. So I have not gone back and rewatched HR Puffenstuff or anything like that because I don't want my memories tarnished.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely understand. The memories, especially of that young childhood. It's like, because even if it's like decent it's not going to be something that you're necessarily going to like now.
Right.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting, though, because the focus on puzzles and wordplay and all of that, I mean, it's very much a system or kind of a gimmick, but it does get kids thinking about that. And I'm all for having people think outside the box and how do you solve a problem and what are the very different ways. And having worked for the last 3 years at an escape room, these types of puzzles are right up my alley.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned in the first episode, they were working on a code. And I remember watching it going, like, as they were about to solve, I was like, oh yeah, you do this, this, and this. And then I realized I learned that by watching this show.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, I know this.
Yeah.
I learned it. I learned it from you,
Mom. I
learned
it by watching you. Yeah, exactly. Although, in not nearly as a destructive sentiment, but yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and let's talk about this episode in particular, or story, really. I keep saying episode instead of story.
It's a story arc.
Yes, story arc. And this is one of the few, because most of the story arcs actually contain 4 episodes. This is one of 2 that actually contained 5. I saved it just for you, Karen.
I think that the gravitas of the situation deserved that 5th episode.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this episode is called To the Light, and it picks up on a story thread that was actually set up in the last story arc, because in the last story arc is actually when we met Double T. Well, in this one, at the beginning of the story arc, Rob and Jamal are getting ready to... Well, Jamal wants Rob to come do something with him, but Rob is like, no, I told Double T I was going to hang out with him. I'm going to hang out with him. And they go to his corner, and his cart is turned over. Some of his stuff is broken. They can't find him. So really, this story is, number 1, about trying to find Double T. And then while they're searching for him, and even after they eventually find him, there's actually some pretty heavy stuff going on that these kids kind of have to try to get their heads around. So it's a pretty heavy set of episodes we have here.
It actually is. And, interestingly, it tackles subjects that much darker shows have tried to tackle, and it deals with it in a fairly light way, but it does address all of the themes. I mean, how often do you see a show that addresses basically PTSD in war vets, or the traumas and the scars of war, and homelessness in general? I mean, there's so many things that are fairly timely to today.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we'll talk about it a bit more in depth, but like you mentioned, we do discover that Double T is basically, he has PTSD. He was in the Vietnam War, and he is really struggling with it to the point where he left his family. He just had to get out on his own. He had to get away in order to feel any sort of... just to kind of get his head on straight in any sort of way. And yeah, I mean, I will say I watch, I always watch the episodes a couple of times. The first time I watched it, I was like, oh, that's pretty good. They're dealing with this, that, and the other. And when I watched it the second time, I was like, the tone is still good, but some of the dialogue itself is just a little clumsy. There's a scene towards the end, and I'm jumping around here, but we do meet Double T's daughter, and when everybody is recovered and everybody's together, they have a conversation, and when I rewatched that conversation, a lot of the actual dialogue in it is a little clumsy, but I really liked the sentiment, especially that Double T left with it, in that he's saying, I'm going to be there. I'm going to try to be there for you. I'm going to go and I'm going to do this thing for you. But I'm not promising anything because this is not an easy thing. I already know this. And I really like the fact that, because in a lot of other, shows, they would try to make it a happy ending and, make it seem like, oh, his PTSD went away, or being with his daughter cured his PTSD. And they're up front saying he might lapse again. He might end up having to run away again. We don't know, but he is going to try.
Yeah. And it's, it's interesting because if I can jump around a little bit, fine. The issue of homelessness was addressed even in the first episode, where everybody who knew Double T was like, Double T's a cool guy because they had gotten to know him. But Gabby was like, I don't look at people who are homeless because they scare me, which honestly, that is still a true thing today. I mean, how often are you in your car at the light and somebody walks by to panhandle, and you kind of don't want to make contact because you're like, either I have no money or whatever. And for me, it's always I don't ever want to tell somebody I don't have any cash, but I never carry cash.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I should carry other things, a baggie of snacks or something like that. But anyways, so I thought that was interesting. And then even Rob talking to his dad at Veteran Affairs, his dad was like, you need to be careful because not all homeless people are trustworthy, which of course, is true.
Yeah.
But all homeless people are still people. So there's probably about as much trustworthiness among that population as you would get in any other
in any
cross section.
Yeah, exactly.
And then once we met Lisa, it humanized him.
Yeah.
He was finally an actual person.
Yeah.
Because my only impressions of him were in those flashbacks because I hadn't watched the previous
episode, right.
And so once she came in, it was like, oh no, he's a legit person. He has a family, and that family wants to know where he is. And I just thought that was an interesting way to kind of bring that full circle from homelessness is scary and unknown to this homeless person is my friend, to this homeless person had some experiences that lots of other people had and just ended up in a different place.
Yeah.
And in fact, he was married, he had a kid, he got divorced. That kid loves her dad.
Yeah. I honestly think that they did a really good job of setting this up because, aside from the obvious, question of, is it a good idea to, put yourself out there for homeless people, really for anyone that you don't know? But then you've got the added layer of these are children. So you need to be extra careful. And I think, number one, the way that they set it up in the first time that we met Double T, Rob didn't just happen upon him on the street. He was at a community center, and the community center director knew the guy, had talked with him and spoken with him before, and invited him to a poetry workshop because he was a writer and a poet. And so I think that was a good introduction for someone Rob's age to this person before he ever, went into his world. There's a really good conversation later on between the Fernandez kids and Papa Fernandez, who I barely ever give him a shout out, but he was played by Sean Elliott. And honestly, I love the Fernandez parents.
I do too.
They're great. They're so natural. And honestly, anytime that the Fernandezes pop up, I know I'm going to at least enjoy the next scene.
Agreed.
Hold on just a second. Teddy, what are you doing, buddy? Calm down. Come here. There's other dogs around, and he doesn't understand why. But yeah, they have a really good conversation about, honestly, just approaching any stranger, and that you want to be kind, but you also want to be careful.
Yes. And that's good advice for everyone.
Yeah.
If I can tell a story, you
Yeah.
can edit this however you want to.
Fine.
But way back in the 90s, in the Portland, Oregon area, my ex owned a comic book shop. And like most comic book shops, it's a place for people to gather. They would come talk about their favorite hobbies. They would play games. They would just sit around. And so there was one guy that would come into the shop, and, we came to know him. And he was homeless, really homeless by choice. Like, there were probably some specific issues going on with him, but he had left his family and moved out to Portland because he didn't want to be part of what he called the rat race.
Sure.
And it was interesting because you talk about, getting to know somebody, and, we got to know him as, first of all, just a customer, somebody who came in and hung around the shop. And eventually, over the course of time, we would hang out and all of this kind of stuff. And it was always interesting where we'd give him a ride back home to the area that he was going to be spending the night in. Yeah. And during really difficult winter nights, we'd actually just let him stay at our house or anything like that. But it's fascinating because people are people first, and there's not always an opportunity to get to know everybody on a deep level as you're walking by them on the street.
Yeah, absolutely.
But where you can, it benefits you, find out about people, be kind.
Yeah.
Get to, people have histories, people have lots of things to give, and a point in life is not where they will be their entire life.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's continue on talking about everything else going on in the story. I mean, obviously, this is a huge part of it is the character of Double T and what he's dealing with. Double T, played by David Patrick Kelly, like I said from the last episode. It was funny in the last episode because the first time we saw him was in an episode with Spike Lee, was also a guest star, and they're frequent collaborators. So I was like, well, that's just kind of a cool coincidence. So there's other stuff going on here. We get the sense that Rob is still kind of hesitant to be part of this team. We actually met him 2 story arcs back, but it wasn't, and we learned in his first story arc that he could see Ghostwriter and he helped out the team, but he didn't become a part of the team until the last episode. And now when he needs help, when Double T goes missing and he's worried about him and all this kind of stuff, he's still hesitant to get the team involved. To the point where Jamal basically has to talk him into calling a rally. So Rob actually calls this rally. Now, he calls it at Jamal's house, so it's still a Rally J. Yes. But he actually does call this rally, which I think I had forgotten, because up to this point, the 2 people that call the most rallies are Jamal and Lenny. Usually it's at either one of their places. I think so far we've had like one rally A that Alex called. But for the most part, it's been those 2. So to get somebody else in the mix, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, he's still calling it at Jamal's house, but at least he gets to call a rally. Because, there's not really a hierarchy on the team, but it's like, if the same people are always calling the rallies, it kind of feels like there's like a power dynamic going on.
Well, there is and there isn't. At that age, I don't know about you, but there were always friends whose houses were the meeting points.
Sure.
And not because they were the dominant person, but because it was the nature of their family to invite people in. True. Whereas I didn't have people over to my house very often because it was a little chaotic and, but it seems like Lenny and Jamal might be the characters that are most outgoing in that respect.
They're among them, yeah.
And feel the most free to do that. During this arc, it was during this arc, wasn't it, You can edit this out if I'm completely
it's
wrong.
Okay.
Was this the arc in which Tina had her dinner party?
Yes. I was going to get to that because Tina does not show up to this rally because of that.
Right. Okay. So we'll get back to that.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, it doesn't necessarily, and Jamal among them, at least out of the places that we have seen a large amount of, Jamal probably has among the nicest houses, and Lenny seemingly lives alone.
Yes.
I mean, she does have a dad, but we hardly ever see him.
We see him at band practice.
Yeah. So they get a whole apartment to themselves when they go to Lenny's.
Honestly, it feels very 90s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah.
Latchkey kid.
Oh, yeah. When I was a kid, I mean, I was left alone by myself from the age of 10 on. You know, I mean,
I think mine was, I was the youngest kid, so
sure.
I probably got the benefit of older
brothers and sisters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I was probably, I was allowed to be at the house by myself probably about third grade, so 8 years old and on.
Yeah. I mean, I was the oldest, so,
Yeah.
I was taking care of my sister, who was 2 to 3 years younger than me.
Right.
Anyway, let's get back into the rally. So, Rob kind of gives everyone the information. He's very hesitant, but they finally talk him into it. Like you mentioned, Gabby is understandably hesitant about, helping someone that she herself does not know. But eventually they all pull together to help out Double T. And something that I actually found really interesting in this is that during this, they're reading the poems in the notebook that Double T left behind. I will say something that struck me really funny about this notebook, and the last poem in particular, the one entitled To the Light, where the story arc name comes from. They end up using it as kind of a map for where to find Double T, which, I mean, I just found really odd because typically, and I would have even thought reading this one, that it was a bit more metaphorical than that.
Right.
Poems usually are not direct, like, this is where I'm going to go in a couple of days. They're usually a bit more metaphorical than that.
Honestly, it reminds me a little bit of, the idea that Remus Lupin from Harry Potter was named for 2 wolves, even though at that point he was not a werewolf.
Right.
Right. So, and same thing with Sirius. And anyways, but yeah, you're right. I think that's a little bit of, creative license.
Yeah. Oh, it's 100% for the mechanic of the story. I mean, obviously they're taking a little liberty. It's understandable. I was like, oh, all right, okay, we can go down this road. I mean, sure. it might confuse some kids later when they're like, I don't see how this tells me where T.S. Eliot is going at all.
Right.
But when they do eventually decide or realize that, Double T is talking about his experiences in Vietnam, I found it really weird because they start talking a lot and asking questions about Vietnam, and I was like, it's just really odd to me that the one character who is from Vietnam is not in this scene. Because I mean, it would be one thing if Tina was Korean or something like that, but she is specifically Vietnamese from Vietnam. She even says later in the episode that she's the first in her family to be born in America. The rest of them were all, from there. And so...
This is a little bit of a guess, but, the Vietnam War to Americans was quite a bit different than the Vietnam War to Vietnamese,
absolutely.
Especially those who emigrated.
Right.
And in some ways, they probably were just avoiding it. And they were also setting up the storyline where her mother gets to tell a story.
Right, the B plot in the next episode, right.
Yeah, and discuss, the things that she misses about her country, happy to be here, but that of course there are things that you can never have again once you have left.
Yeah.
So in some ways it's not, I think it was probably a deliberate choice.
I think you're right.
Let's talk about all the atrocities of the Vietnam War.
Right, exactly. It's like I think part of me was like, oh, that would have been a really interesting conversation to have, but maybe not in a kids show for 6 to 8 to 10-year-olds. Maybe not.
Right. I'm just thinking, when I was watching them describe Vietnam, the Vietnam War, I was like flashing back to seeing Platoon and Full Metal Jacket. And I'm like, yeah, this was a whole lot uglier than these kids have any clue about.
Yeah. Honestly, it's uglier than most people in America even want to admit it was.
It is uglier than anything that I probably even actually know about.
Absolutely. But yeah, I just, I thought it was a weird choice. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that there was probably for a reason. And, right after that, they get into, we've already talked about it, but they kind of start talking about the issues that Double T is having, that they can obviously sense through this poem. And basically they give a child's understanding of PTSD. And it's like, for a kid, it's like, that's not a bad way to put it, but it's like, you're missing a lot of it, but there's no way you would know that.
Right. And let's face it, that's more baggage than.
Oh, absolutely. I will say, we talked about the PTSD issue earlier, but I do like that they confront it from several different angles, because they confront it from a child who might be watching it, their understanding, if they know like a family member that suffered from it, their understanding of it. Then they give more of the clinical diagnosis from Rob's dad at the VA.
Right.
And then you get the personal experience from Double T. And his is not the most eloquent, but you can tell the man is troubled.
Right. Well, and even further than that, and one of the best features of the arc was the War Memorial, where you have the actual letters from veterans. Yeah. And that was very interesting. I actually would love to go see that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think I went to New York a couple of years ago, and I think that's one of the things we checked out. But yeah, just seeing it here, like, all of those letters from, because it's not just, a list of names of people that we lost. It's not just, it is actual, like, letters from, so it's like, they're not just nameless, faceless. Right. We are actually seeing bits of their personality that they sent home to family. Right. And it's like, that's a memorial.
I just watched the miniseries The Pacific, and there were a number of featured scenes where characters were writing letters home or receiving information from home, and so that kind of really hit that when you are in such a different place, the only connection that you have, you can't pick up your cell phone and just text somebody or anything, especially back in those days. It was, you were connected by pen and paper if you were connected at all.
Right.
And sometimes that tethering back to normal life was a lifeline for folks to, try to hold on to some semblance of normalcy or to familiarity in terrible circumstances.
Yeah. All right. So, sorry, getting back, it's like, how do you transition from talking about a serious subject to talking about an episode of Ghostwriter?
Right.
But, like I said, the team is helping out Rob, for the first little bit. Rob tries some of his own avenues. We already mentioned that he went to see his dad at the VA, and his dad, couldn't help him, number one, because he's not family. Number two, he's a little, he doesn't know Double T. All he knows is, that his son knows him and seems to be looking up to this guy, and also that he's, a homeless vet. It's like there's not a whole lot to go on.
Well, we also get the insight that Rob and his dad have a little bit of a strained relationship because Rob wants to express himself through his writing and his dad just doesn't get it. So in some ways there is a dichotomy of, I wouldn't say that Double T is a father figure to Rob, but in a way he's more of like an older brother or a mentor to allow Rob to grow up to be the person that he is going to be. And his dad comes along a bit of a journey during the arc.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely fulfills a mentor role in his life. I will say, though, I was a little annoyed at the way that they portrayed the relationship between Rob and his dad, because it did kind of underplay what had been established in the previous arc. Now, I understand if maybe, the idea that maybe his dad just still doesn't necessarily get it, but in the last arc, he wrote a letter to his dad to basically describe to him how important writing was. And in that, while, his dad is still his dad and he's maybe not, writing is important to him, I felt like in that scene, he understood, at least to the point that he wasn't going to push his son to do the things that he wanted him to do. He had a certain understanding, and I felt like at least some of the way that his dad was described kind of undercut that. And I'm like, of course, I think it's probably a bit more nuanced of a relationship. It just felt like that wasn't acknowledged, even though it was done in the story arc just right before it.
Well, I will say, with the exception of Alex and Gabby's parents, and a little bit with, with Tina's mom and dad, you got to see them a bit. At least they were showing a realistic relationship between a father and a son that could happen, even if it wasn't as well developed. I have to say, I was super irritated with the subplot of Jamal's grandma. I was like, why is this here? There are,
you already mentioned the first one. This is one of the few, because the first two story arcs that we had didn't have subplots at all. And then in the two previous ones, we had basically one per episode with a little bit of bleed over with one of them. One, like, kind of started in the first episode and then continued in the second one. This time, we get almost two concurrent B-plots running at the same time, because we've got Tina and her dinner party. And then, yes, we've got Grandma Jenkins' subplot, which I will say, the way it starts, honestly, the first, 3 episodes of Grandma Jenkins' subplot, I'm like, I could do without this.
Yeah.
The fourth one, which we'll talk about later, I really liked, but
I agree.
Yeah. I think that they could have really shrunk that down. I will say probably one of the big reasons that they stretched it out is that Marcella Lowry, who plays Grandma Jenkins, had actually been absent from the last story arc, and she is the only adult who is featured on the main cast list in the credits.
Yes.
So I think that that's one of the reasons that they stretched that out, is because, she was billed as main cast, or, seemingly, and, where's she been?
Right.
And
who knows? Those are secrets that Hollywood will never give up.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, in this one, we really just get the setup of, she's a letter carrier. She goes to a house with a dog, and honestly, it's a small little fluffy dog.
It was cute.
Yeah. I'm just saying a letter carrier probably wouldn't be that intimidated by that type of dog.
I don't know, because little dogs tend to bite more than big dogs in many ways. I mean,
yeah, but
you get those ankle biters.
Yeah, but it's annoying. You run up, you drop it in the mail slot, you leave. I'm just saying it's probably not going to do that much of damage. But she kind of has a standoff with him in the first episode, and they kind of leave it there for this. The other one, like we mentioned a couple of times, Tina is having a dinner party for her friends. And this is actually the first story arc in which we are introduced to her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Nguyen, played by Richard Ng and Jenny Yang, respectively. And we don't get a whole lot of time. We definitely don't get much time with Mr. Nguyen. He's, I think, in one... he's in like the second episode, and he gets like a couple of lines of dialogue, and that's it. We get a little bit more of Mrs. Nguyen.
Yeah, you at least get the family setting and the family culture. And honestly, I'll tell you right now that when I was watching it and they were describing what they were going to have for dinner, I'm like, oh, that sounds really good.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I wanted to look up the recipe for sweet rice, and there were a few things I'm like, I could make dinner. I could do this.
Yeah, I honestly really liked the fact that they set up, because Tina specifically asks, can we have sweet rice and black-eyed beans for dessert?
Yes.
And I was like, that's a really interesting thing to introduce to kids over here who would hear rice and beans for dessert? What? That's weird. But it's like, yes, they're a different culture than you. You might actually like that.
Yep.
Think about that.
I love it. I think it's great.
Oh, yeah. I love the fact that we're getting more from these kids. Like I said, this is the first time we've met Tina's parents. And so to get more introduction to what's going on with her and, her home life. We've seen, honestly, she's really the last one whose home life we haven't seen. I will say Rob's is rather limited, because the most we've ever seen is his bedroom and his dad walks in.
Sure.
But for a character as kind of closed off as Rob is, that kind of works and makes sense. But I like the fact that we've finally gotten introduced to Tina's home life.
Can I bring up one super random thought that I had during this?
Yeah, go for it.
So as we're at Tina's house and she's, talking with her mom, and her mom is trying to piece back together this dish, and later on for the dinner party, did you notice the back wall looked like the interior studs of a wall? Like it was like studs and then plywood and then a bunch of little shelves. And I just kept trying to figure out, I'm like, is that like, what's going on with this? Is there additional insulation on the other side? Like, what does this look like? Because it just looked like a set turned around.
Yeah, it probably was.
It probably was, but I was just like, I have to say, my mind got derailed from some of the content, because I was like,
sure.
What is this house? How is that a feature?
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I feel like they're also trying to paint Tina's family as lower income. So I think that some of that aesthetic kind of came from that idea. I mean, some of it also just may have come from, these are the sets, this is what we have to work with, make this work.
Yeah, and we'll get there when we get into the subway.
Sure. Oh, yeah. There are a couple more things that I want to mention in this first episode. Honestly, just a couple of things that I thought were funny. Number one, when Rob and Jamal are walking to Double T's corner, Jamal, what he's trying to get Rob to do is he wants him to go to the bike store with him to check out the new bikes. Did you register the name of the bike store?
No, what was it?
Different Spokes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was like, oh geez. Okay, I gotta write that down. I
appreciate a good pun. I did not catch that.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. Something we have pointed out in previous story arcs is that the naming conventions in some of these episodes are not the best. So the fact that they were able to come up with different spokes for a bike chain like that is just mentioned in a throwaway line of dialogue, I was like, okay, they're bringing up their game a little bit. That's good.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, that's a far cry from Thabtos.
Oh, geez. Yeah. The fact that you went back and watched that episode, like, I feel even worse for you.
I do too.
Oh, okay. And then also we do, like I said, Rob, after going to the VA, decides to check at the shelter that Double T would sometimes stay at. And this is where he meets Double T's daughter. But before we get into that scene, he sees her talking to the guard, and the guard specifically says, "I can't tell you about these guys. That's against the rules." And so she leaves. That was interesting. Yeah. I was like, okay, all right, but Rob is like, "I know what you just said," and he's like, yeah, and he's like, "But Double T," he's like, "Yeah, okay, I know Double T." And he's like, "Well, do you know where he is?" And I'm like, okay, so he can't tell him anything about him, but he literally points to another guy. He goes, "That guy might be able to tell you." And I'm like,
right.
That to me seems like an even bigger violation.
I agree. I mean, be consistent.
Yeah.
Now, they had to move the story along, and they needed to introduce the daughter.
But I feel like maybe, somebody, like another person may have overheard and been like, "Hey, sorry, that guy's a jerk. That guy over there, hush, he and Double T are tight." Of course, then they would have had to pay another actor to give that one scene. Right.
Or they could have just, I mean, there are ways that could have been worked differently.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, we then do get to meet Lisa Norbert, who is...
Christy Graves.
Yes, played by Christy Graves. And I will say it annoyed me, the fact that they didn't tell us how old she was until like the 4th episode, because I kept trying to figure out, okay, who is this kid? Why is she in New York by herself?
Without her parents.
Yeah, and I'm just
for multiple days.
Yeah.
Poking around homeless shelters.
Yeah, eventually we find out that she's about to graduate high school. That's one of the reasons that she's looking for her dad.
Still too young to
still
wander.
Very, I mean, I will say that, she is staying with friends. I'm assuming these are friends with, adults present that maybe that's why her mom let her go. But she's wandering the city. Of course, these 12 and 13-year-olds are also wandering the city by themselves. It's a convention of the show. Right. I mean,
they stay in Brooklyn at least.
Yeah.
Well, no, they do. They go over to the South Ferry, and that's not in Brooklyn, is it?
No.
That's in Manhattan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I mean, they can see the Statue of Liberty from it.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been to that exact port, and I appreciate the realism.
Yeah, I will say, at least in that scene, we got a scene of Jamal asking his grandmother for permission.
Yes.
And then telling all of the kids to call home and, get permission. So at least there was that kind of we're covering ourselves.
And same thing with Alex and Gabby, although that might have been a different episode.
Yeah, that was later for a different episode.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, so was the South Ferry thing, but that's okay.
Sure.
But yeah, so we meet Lisa, and Rob quickly figures out that they're looking for the same person. Her father's name is actually Thomas Norbert, and Norbert is an anagram of Trueborn, which is what Double T goes by, Tommy Trueborn.
It's a puzzle.
I know. Intrigue. Dun, dun, dun. But yes, then going into the second episode, we're going to try to move this along. Really, at this point, they're looking for Double T. I will say something important that does happen here is that Rob decides now that he's got Lisa, and he's afraid of, Lisa being weirded out by trying to bring her into this group, and also she won't be able to see a Ghostwriter, and also Rob is just reluctant. He feels like, he talks about it later, but he feels like, he's had a hard time making friends with his dad moving around, and he has a hard time trusting this new group. He feels like, especially, with Gabby expressing her, uncomfortability, he feels like, I'm sure the whole group feels like that, and they're just being nice, so I'm going to take it out of their hands, and I'm going to do this all on my own.
Sure.
But I found it really funny because the team, after he leaves, they're like, well, should we still help look for Double T? And they're like, let's vote. And I'm like, okay, sure, let's vote. At this point, Tina is still working on the dinner party, which is something that is brought up by Alex, because he's like, where's Tina? And of course, we get Gabby being her perfect little sister self and kind of ribbing him for it. Because, they've dropped hints of, kind of Alex and Tina, and are they going to be a couple kind of thing? It's real
They've
silly.
dropped anchors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because you saw that first episode. But yeah, so there's another, I'm going to call them Teen-X hint. So they vote, and of course, Lenny and Jamal vote to stay helping, because that's what they do. Gabby, obviously, because she's uncomfortable, she votes against helping. But, of course, Alex, Mr. Reactionary Alex, votes, no, he said he didn't want us. Let's not do anything. And I just got to say...
That's not good enough, Alex.
Because Alex just has a tendency when he doesn't have to do things to not do things. He's a little bit of a jerk. But that's Alex.
Sure. Well, the other thing is, and this goes back to Gabby's little subplot about being afraid of homeless people. Mm-hmm. I actually think that, I knew that they probably needed somebody to bite the bullet on that one.
Right.
But I kind of don't think it would have been Gabby. I mean, she is an outgoing kid. She was the one in the first arc where she was like, I'm going to go walk home. Now I got my stolen backpack back. I'm not afraid.
I think it makes sense in a couple of different ways. Number one, because out of the entire group, she is the youngest. Not just the character, but the actress is the youngest in the entire group. And also, there's the fact that pretty much all the rest of them have met Double T in one way because they're in that older group.
Sure.
I think Tina is the only one that really doesn't express... Well, actually, Tina's not there when it first comes up.
Right.
So, she would have been the only other one that I think may have been hesitant.
Because she's younger too, isn't she?
Yeah, she's I think 1 year, or her character is supposed to be 1 year older than Gabby. Actually, the actress Tramon Tran was the same age as the whole rest of the cast. But they cast her as younger because she looked young.
Yep.
And also, just to be blunt, Gabby is one of the best performers amongst all of them. So to kind of have her present the other side probably was a better idea than someone like Tina, who,
Right.
She's not bad, but she doesn't stand out as much,
It's kind of telling that most of these kids, with the exception of Blaise Berdal, who had a career kind of before this and went on and probably did the most
Yeah, she's still voice acting. And
right, but everybody else is like, they have 2 or 3 credits in their IMDb, and that is it. Which that is what it is. This is an East Coast production, right? Was it I know it was probably filmed in the East Coast, but it feels like it draws from some of that crowd, which did not have the most robust television resources, I guess,
Right,
maybe at the
right.
time.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, that the outdoor stuff is actually filmed on location in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I get kind of what you're saying, but I think that, they didn't have a whole lot of options for who would be the best idea. And I think in some ways she does make the most sense.
Sure. In all honesty, you know what it would have been more appropriate is to have one of the parents express those views, because frankly, that's probably more realistic.
Sure, they do eventually, but parents are not a huge part of this show.
Sure.
So, and like I said, Rob's dad does explain hesitance, but he's not a part of the group, so it doesn't, kids expect their parents to tell them they can't do things for worrying reasons, but to have another kid express worry, I think is, going to communicate more to younger kids.
Yep.
Anyway, like I said, they vote and Ghostwriter breaks the tie. He goes the way we all would have expected him to. He says, we must help friends, of course. That's really all that goes on with the main part of the team. I will say, though, that they do... Jamal reveals that one of his bed sheets is a map of New York. And I will say, when he pulled that thing out, I was like, that does not look comfortable. You shouldn't sleep with that. But
it doesn't even look as big as a bed sheet.
No, yeah, it's like just the size of the top of his bed.
Right.
It doesn't.
And then they all stomp on it with their shoes. I was like, take your shoes off.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Yeah, that scene, that was just a scene of kids being goofy, which, I think a show, especially a show with when they're dealing with subject matter this dark, they need to, show a scene of the kids just goofing off.
I agree. I'm just saying, as an adult, I'm like, take your shoes off.
Absolutely. All right. Like I said, we've got 2 B plots continuing here. We've got Tina having her dinner party. And in this one, the very first scene that we see of Tina, she is reaching for something and knocks over a plate that is at the end of a cabinet. And we reveal that this was actually her mother's plate. It was decorated with Mai flowers, which are a flower that is grown almost exclusively in Vietnam because of the weather conditions that are required for it. And, obviously her mother's upset. But I will say, I wondered the way that they were doing it. I was like, okay, is she just going to glue that thing together? Because when we first saw Tina take off, I thought, oh, she's going to try to replace the plate. But eventually we find out that she's actually just trying to get real Mai flowers for her mother.
Yes.
Because honestly, it looked like all of the pieces were there and not very many of them were small. And honestly, it looked like a decorative plate anyway. I don't think anybody was eating on it. So do you think, are they salvaging that plate? Is she just gluing it back together? Or does Tina just believe that, getting flowers is better than replacing the plate?
Well, I don't know that she can replace the plate. And I think that Mom was just piecing it back together so we could have a better look at it as she's telling her story.
Yeah, because we really
I don't think that there was any real indication that they were going to try to piece it back together. But I thought it was actually sweet that she, was so sad about breaking one of her mother's cherished objects that she just wanted to make her happy and try to find something that she has not seen since she left Vietnam.
Right. And I mean, you brought this up before, but I just want to reiterate it. I loved the fact that, after this kind of sweeping over, oh yeah, he was in Vietnam, that we get a scene from a woman who lived in Vietnam expressing kind of, missing something from there, like you said, humanizing it for a minute.
In some ways, it was the juxtaposition to all of the letters that were written by the soldiers, where they were looking for something familiar, and so was she.
Yeah. So Tina eventually, we get a scene with her and she just randomly walks up upon this man. And I don't know, like, part of me wasn't sure how to take this man for a little bit. And
I thought that was cute.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I just any scene with an old guy trying to be cute with a young girl, I automatically am like, danger, danger, danger. But I mean, yeah, he definitely proved to be, you know, fine. But at first I was like, okay, what's going on here? What's going on? But yeah, he was just like, you know, somebody had told her that he at least might know who makes the flower, and he dances around it, and he was like, you know, there's a very wise man around here who makes these flowers. He's very handsome. He should be in a movie. And she's like, okay, I get your point. I'll put you in my next movie. And he's like, all right, I got the flowers. It's like, all right.
I think that's cute.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I really actually enjoyed about that was showing the age ranges in the neighborhood, and that actually would be very true, where you have you know, immigrants that have maybe all kind of moved into the same neighborhood or close by, where you're going to have multi-generations.
Yeah.
And, you know, seeing him sitting out on his stoop, you know, in the middle of the day, just kind of biding his time, seems like something that you would actually see if you were to walk down any neighborhood, not just an enclave of Vietnamese families.
No, yeah.
Anytime you will see, you know, little old ladies, little old men sitting out on porches and just kind of living their life and doing their things. And I appreciate that for just a moment. It felt like you had the fullness of all generations, from the young to the parents to the older generation.
Sure.
And that older generation would keep some of the traditions alive in the new countries.
Right. Well, and I, you know, just kind of building on what we've already said, but the fact that they decided to go with this subplot during a story where we're talking about the Vietnam War, you know, they're trying to put a human face on it. These are these are the people that were there, that lived in the country where this, you know, ridiculous conflict was taking place. You know, it's not just about the war. There are real people that actually lived there. So yeah, I liked the fact that we got so much of real Vietnam along with the story.
I thought about this as I was watching, was what was the writer's room like? Yeah. Because, you know, the writer's room is made up of real people who actually have knowledge and experience and much greater depth of opinion than you can show in a children's educational show. And I kind of wonder if they would appreciate your podcast for truly going through and like linking all of the things and that said, these are the stories that we told and they had meaning as well and as in depth as we could do it without overburdening people with, you know, basically crazy emotional baggage. And I would hope that they would appreciate how much thought is going into the discussing of all of these things and the appreciation of a story that is told in this format.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, you know, I haven't looked up that much about the writing team. I would hope, especially, you know, from what we see of the cast, that it was as diverse as possible. I will say one thing, though, that we do know is that there weren't very many young people in it, unless for some reason they weren't there when they were writing the cool lines for children, because those definitely sound like they were written by a 40-year-old.
Hello, fellow kids.
Yes.
I agree.
I'm the dopest. Yeah. Oh, jeez. I meant to pull it out, but Jamal had another one of those. I'm the coolest, yo. I was just like, oh,
Right.
Jamal, you're such a dork.
Do not even bring me back to Lenny writing songs.
Oh, geez. Yeah, this is actually one of the few episodes that we do not get any sort of songwriting or song playing or any of that.
And I am
from
grateful
Lenny.
for it.
Well, you should just feel fortunate that I didn't invite you on for the episode where she records a music video.
Oh, God.
Oh, all right. Well, I will say, so at the end of that storyline, Tina does get the Mayflower for her mother. It makes her late for her own dinner party, but the moment she shows the flower to her mother, she's instantly out of trouble.
Right.
Because
flowers do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially flowers that are that hard to get a hold of that,
Correct.
hold that much, personal meaning for her. It's like, Dad, take notes. This is the one you need to get.
Exactly.
This is the flower. Oh, other than that, I mean, obviously we have Rob and Lisa doing their thing. They go back to both the VA and the shelter. And they honestly don't get that much more information from Rob's dad with Lisa, but they do at least get the PTSD diagnosis. And I will say that I kind of liked the way that they played Lisa's reaction to that, because she was like, when she was talking to Rob's dad, she was like, well, at least I kind of know where he's coming from.
Right.
But still, when, she's like, but why didn't he just come to us? Why didn't he talk to us? And Rob is like, he didn't feel like he could, and she doesn't get it. She doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
That's pretty honest, honestly. I
Yeah.
mean, at what age were you when you realized that your parents were actually people and not just your parents?
Right.
That they
Right.
had their own lives and experiences and were probably a lot like you were.
Yeah.
Just without your presence.
Well, and I think it's also just kind of, not having the same perspective, because
Right.
she hears that he's got PTSD, but that doesn't necessarily make any sense to her. It's like,
No.
okay, so he's dealing with this stuff, but he still let me down.
Well, and you know what? It's interesting because her relationship, even though it is with the same person, is 100% different.
From Rob's,
to Rob,
absolutely, yeah.
Double T
Yeah.
is a cool friend.
Yeah.
And he is somebody who has, creative interests.
Right.
To Lisa,
yeah.
he is dad, and dad who was there, and she probably has many fond memories, and then a whole bunch of things that are disappointing. And
Yeah.
through the eyes of a child, you see your parents in a very specific way. And
Yeah.
so I actually thought that that was one of the best things. I kind of wish that they would have gone into more stories about
Sure.
what she knew about him as she was growing up, or that kind of stuff, because it would have humanized him even more.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, to Rob, he's Double T, the guy that helped him talk to his dad. And to her, he's the dad she can't talk to.
Right.
So, and honestly, I think the fact that knowing he helped Rob frustrates her even more.
Sure, because he could do that for somebody else, but not for her.
Yeah.
And there's, again, that's one of those things that hits right home.
Yeah.
Where you're like, why couldn't you be that for me?
Yeah.
But you could be for other people. And that's, that's something that people of every age have to work through. And there's never usually a great resolution, because sometimes that's just the way life is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, aside from that, they do write a letter to Hush, but they have to leave before he gets it, because basically they're closing up the shelter for the night. The only other thing really of note that happens in this episode is we get a continuation of Grandma Jenkins' story. She gets to deliver the mail, but the dog eats the celery.
Which I thought was actually really funny.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's another joke.
I don't know why she was angry.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I will say she doesn't seem that angry in this scene. It's really not until later that we get her expressing anger over that.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so then going into the third episode, so we get Rob and Lisa returning to get Hush's response. Basically, he got the letter and he decided...
That's not good enough, Alex.
So they decide that they have to try again. So they write a better letter explaining who they actually are and, just kind of getting more into, their reason for asking him for help. And they get a response from him. Basically, he comes out and tells them he doesn't know where Double T is either, but he might be in this place where they used to sleep in this tunnel. And then they get the brilliant idea. I will say, I'll give Rob a little credit. He tries to talk Lisa out of this, but Lisa has the brilliant idea of, let's go into the tunnel. Rob is like, no, let's tell someone. Let's get someone else on. I will say, at the very least, they should have, called someone to let them know they were going down there. I mean,
do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculously dangerous, the idea of them even going down there, but they should have at least let someone know they were going down there, because that's beyond stupid.
Collapsing subway tunnels notwithstanding, going into those tunnels is probably one of the stupidest things that I had heard.
I mean, honestly, because even more realistically, there could have been dangerous people down there.
Or at the very least, rats.
Yeah.
And urine smell. I mean, they are in a weird little sanitized area that they crawl into, and I'm like, this is F grade for realism in terms of subway makeup.
It's a little, not the best. But the rest of the team at this point, they've gotten the clue for the South Ferry. They're looking around for Double T. And what I think is really funny is that before they actually figure out that he's at the Veterans Memorial, before they go home and have lunch and all that kind of good stuff, they are literally standing in front of the sign for the entrance to the Veterans Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice that behind them? I was like, I'm looking and I'm reading and I'm like...
Before they go into the subway?
Yeah, before they go home to break for lunch. Well, no, actually, this was before, because at this point, they are convinced that, they're taking the clues from the poem, and they're convinced that Double T is either at a church or at the cemetery. Which, right. I mean, they're close with the Veterans Memorial, but this is the scene where we get Alex and Tina going to check out the church, because Tina's creeped out by the cemetery, and Alex just wants to go with Tina, and the rest of them go to the cemetery. This is the scene I was referring to. This is the first time that we've seen any kind of this from Tina. I mean, in the last episode, she showed concern when he twisted his ankle, but this is the first time that we've shown, maybe she's interested in him too, and this isn't just, Alex being creepy.
Sure. Read the room, Alex. Read the room.
Yeah, it's like...
That's not good enough, Alex.
You gotta be better, Alex. You just gotta be better. But once they completely miss the Veterans Memorial, they do go back, and this is where we lose Jamal for a little bit, because this is where the B plot, Grandma's B plot, finally starts to pay off, because Grandma goes by the house one more time to, I guess she's got more mail to deliver or whatever, but she sees the dog Winston. We found this out from the last episode because she saw his food bowl. His owner, and she tries to get his attention. He whirls around and sprays her with a hose. And they tried to play it off like he was excited, but it was so unnatural and so, like, just set up for the plot that I was like, you guys really needed to work on that scene before you filmed it.
Right.
Because it really didn't work.
I mean, right.
Yeah. Like, I actually liked that character once we actually, you know, got them interacting and everything. But that first scene was not good. I was like, oh, that was so set up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but again, there's a level of corniness.
Oh, yeah.
And I will just say it. There's a level of corniness and bad acting that cannot overcome.
Yeah.
But when you know, eventually you suspend disbelief and you kind of move along because you catch the grain of the story and you're like, all right, let's just keep moving.
Yeah.
And you know, we're not expecting Meryl Streep or anything, but it is fascinating how bad some of the transitions, I guess, are.
And at this point, I'm just going to continue on with the rest of this B plot because I think this actually concludes in the 4th episode, but I don't care. I just want to continue talking about because this is actually where it starts to become interesting. So eventually, Bertrand Braithwaite, played by Conrad Roberts, and Winston the dog, played by Marilyn, actually come over to apologize to Cece, to Grandma Jenkins. And, you know, at first she's upset, but then she finds out that the reason that he accidentally sprayed her with the hose was because at that very moment he had gotten a telegram that his daughter had had a baby and he was just excited. And so she decides to let him call his granddaughter, and then they have a little flirtation. And by the time Jamal gets back for lunch, I'm just saying, Grandma's got a boyfriend.
Right.
Cause she is all about Bertrand at this point. And this is, where we, I will also say, Jamal's got a new daddy. Because, as previously mentioned, he was, in the first 2 stories, he was played by Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson is gone off making, Jurassic Park and Pulp Fiction at this point. So now Jamal's dad is played by Dean Irby. And I will say that this was probably the wrong storyline to introduce him on because he comes off as an ass in his first couple of scenes. An absolute ass because the first time we really see him, he's just displaying kind of frustration by having to deal with Bertrand. At this point, you know, when the team realizes that Jamal's got company, Lenny's like, "You want to go to my house?" And they're all like, "Yeah." And they're like, "See you, Jamal." Like it literally is just like, thanks. Bye.
Peace out.
Yeah. And so, like I said, they lose Jamal for a little bit, but we stay with him. And eventually, like, you can tell that Grandma really likes Bertrand, and he's from Trinidad, and he seems really cool, and, you know, he's just had a grandchild and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, they've had lunch. In the 4th episode, we come upon them that they've had lunch and he's talking, and honestly, he seems really interesting. And then he excuses himself and he's like, "Well, I'll see you guys later." And it's made clear that he's going to be seeing Cece very soon.
Right.
And the moment he leaves, Dad goes into full asshole mode. And he is just
I will not allow this.
Yeah, he literally tells his mother. He says, he's like, "I'm not going to allow it." And I stood up and applauded when I heard Grandma say this.
Let me tell you something, Reginald Harmony Jenkins. The next time you think about not letting me do something, you better make sure I'm in a diaper and crawling around on all fours.
She makes the point of, you know, I'm a human being. I make my own decisions. Don't you dare try to, tell me what to do. He keeps kind of going, and then she has another bit of dialogue, which honestly, like, that was the one, like, it almost, especially with what's going on right now, almost brought tears to my eyes.
Look, I've been a mother since the day you were born, and a grandmother since Denitra and Jamal came into this world. But I have always been a human being. And as a human being, I have a right to live my life the way I see fit. And that includes choosing my own friends.
You tell them, Grandma.
Yeah,
you go.
That her... And I appreciated this point. I mean, yeah. I almost feel like, again, aside from some of the like looseness in terms of delving into it, it almost feels like some of these B plots are writer's prompts.
Yeah.
And I've built an entire backdrop of what Grandma's life was, and the fact that, just because she has a grown-up child who himself has 2 kids,
right.
Doesn't mean that she is not interested. I mean, the truth is that the actress at that time is probably younger than I am right now. And while I don't have kids or grandkids, I certainly don't feel like I should be shelved from having a social life.
No, absolutely not.
And so when you said that you stood up and applaud, as I was watching it and those words came out of his mouth, I'm like, oh, this is not going to go well.
Oh, yeah. No. And like I said, it's a really bad brush to paint him with in his first scene. It's like, okay, I know that we've established the character of Jamal's dad, but we have not established this actor in this scene, right, in this role. And for him, the very first thing that he does to be complaining and trying to belittle his own mother, I was like, can somebody get Samuel L. on the phone?
I will say, like, I would actually raise money, do a GoFundMe to see Samuel L. Jackson's take on that exact same role, because
we would get fireworks. Honestly, I would have. I hate that he left before this scene, because I think there would have. I mean, we don't. Because of the nature of this show, we don't get a whole lot of, just really standout performances. That would have been, and we've had some pretty decent ones. I think Double T has done a really good job
He's
both.
Had a long career.
Oh yeah, David Patrick Kelly has done a great job with Double T in both the last 2 storylines, and I think that Marcella Lowry as Grandma in this one gave a great performance. But could you imagine if she was backed up by Samuel L.? Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah. She is so charming. I mean, she's just one of those people you're like, yep, you can be my grandma.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, no, I was really excited. And honestly, that to me, that whole scene between her and her son, for that, I was like, okay, I'm fine with this storyline.
Yep.
Up until this point, I was like, why do we keep doing this? It's like, I'm glad to see Marcella Lowry actually getting a scene. But I was like, why are we doing this? And when they did this, I was like, okay, that's why we did this. That is why we did this.
Yep.
But yeah, really, really good stuff. But then moving over to Rob and Lisa, like I said, they have foolishly gone into a tunnel by themselves without telling anyone. And of course, Rob has dropped his pen in the tunnel, and then immediately, once they get into a chamber, which, like you said, the set for this is, I mean, why you would have like a small little antechamber like this in a tunnel.
It's like the Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah, I'm like, why do we have this? Yeah, but once they get into that little room, which I'm like, why? Oh, well, I mean, obviously they went into that room because they were like, that's where they think Double T might be. But immediately there's a cave in. I will say the only part of that I was like, this makes no sense, is there was nothing, like, nobody, like, tripped onto anything, or nothing felt like there was no reason for there to suddenly be a cave-in.
Right, and especially since most of, I mean, I do not know all of the geology of New York City, but isn't it all pretty much granite?
Yeah, I'm like...
What's going on without a lot of seismic activity?
And to be honest, like, for an actual cave-in in those tunnels, the whole tunnel really would have collapsed.
Yeah, agreed.
They would have been dead. But, whatever. Obviously, we didn't want to kill off Rob in his third story. That probably wouldn't be the best way to continue with the character.
I mean, it would have shook things up a little bit.
It would have made things different.
Their bones will lie in the Chamber of Secrets forever.
Forever, yes. But immediately, when Rob notices that his pen is missing, he freaks out and...
What are you looking for?
My pen. It's lost.
You are worried about a pen?
It's a very important pen. It could help us get out of here.
Oh, great! I am trapped in a tunnel with a boy who believes in super pens. Does it have a cape? Can it fly?
I will say I play that for a number of reasons. Number one, because that starts the running joke of for Lisa of Super Pen, which I'm like, okay, you're trying to be clever, you're not succeeding. But also, this brings up the whole idea, and honestly, this is really the first storyline where this is really brought to light, and later it becomes a thing for the whole rest of the team. But the fact that to everyone else, their belief and dependence on Ghostwriter makes them sound absolutely insane.
Sure. Because
here Rob is in a tunnel that has just closed up, and he is worried about a pen. Now, to us, we're like, well, if he had his pen, he could at least write it on his hand and get a message out to Ghostwriter. But if we were in that situation, and some dude was like, oh, no, my pen, I'm like, dude, it's
open a vein,
pen.
Rob.
Yeah.
Take some initiative.
Yeah, we're gonna die. Chill out about your pen. But... And it comes up later with the team when Ghostwriter is giving them clues of how to help Rob, and they keep just spouting this stuff out of nowhere, and people are like, where did you get that? And they have to make up ridiculous excuses.
Right. Why are you all staring into the air?
Yeah.
Like your cat does when you think they see a demon or something.
Yeah. Your cat's just playing with Ghostwriter. That's all that's happening.
Right? My cat is seeing little cat letters in the air.
Cat words, yes. Mm-hmm. Ghostwriter speaks cat, I'm sure. But yeah, it really kind of brings up... This is, like I said, the first story, and one of the few that I remember this really being a thing. And, like, I like that they actually do mention this, but, obviously there isn't really an answer to it, because they'd sound insane if they were like, right. Well, there's this being that talks to us through words that you can't see. Okay, I think we need to go see the doctor.
Right.
I mean, that's obviously what would happen if they tried to explain. So, I mean, I like that they do try to explain it away, but obviously, for some of them, they just keep coming up with the same excuse. Rob told me earlier.
Right.
And it's like, and you didn't tell anyone that he was going down in a dark, dangerous tunnel? Now you sound like an idiot.
Right.
But yeah, I just thought that was interesting that was brought up.
I agree, and it's interesting that it was actually repeated several times during the last two episodes.
Yeah, and of course it's continued because Rob, when he can't find his pen, starts writing words with rocks. We know that Rob is actually being very useful, but to Lisa, he just looks like an idiot that's not... I mean, I will say all of her plans to get them out are all ridiculously dangerous, and Rob shouldn't have helped her with that either.
Agreed.
But he does look like he is doing absolutely nothing. And his whole, excuse of, I'm sending out positive vibes, rescue vibes. It's like, he is lucky that she eventually came around to that, because that just sounds absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it does, but in all honesty, if you're going to be bored in the house and in the house bored, you might as well do something.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, honestly, like I said, all of the get out plans are too dangerous. So, writing words in the sand or on whatever it is probably the best bet he's got.
I would like to think, though, that there could have been a little more brainstorming in terms of how do we get ourselves out of this.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't even see them checking the cave-in wall, like to check for stability or anything like that.
No, they just started moving rocks out of the way, and I'm like, well, if those were caving in, do you think that there might be some additional rocks?
Yeah. But this does bring us, for the most part, into episode 4. This is where we finally get the revelation that Lisa is graduating from high school, which, like I said, you couldn't tell by looking at her. I thought that, based on the way that she was carrying herself, that she probably was at least a little older than Rob. But, I mean, he's supposed to be like 12 or 13, and she's supposed to be 17 or 18. I wouldn't have guessed that there was that big of a gap.
I agree.
And let's see. We do finally in this episode. Oh, this is the part that you were talking about before, when they finally figure out that Double T is at the Veterans Memorial. Because, okay, so Ghostwriter sends them a letter from the Veterans Memorial, and it literally on it has the date of 1968. And they start piecing apart the words from the letter, and they're like, he's missing New York City water. He must have left. And I'm like, are you guys ignoring the date? Completely ignoring it literally in the part that he gave them. It gave a date, and I was like, they're just assuming that it's from Double T without thinking about everything. I was like,
some of the problem solving in this is a little basic. For example, when they start to figure out the different letters and that kind of stuff, I'm like, could you not see that this was an anagram to begin with? Could you just not see it?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that is because, we've said it before, it's an educational program. They're trying to teach kids, and so they've got to have a reason to teach them. A lot of times they'll go over the same thing again 2 episodes later, and it's like, you should remember this, but some of the kids watching might not, so okay. I will say, though, the only thing that really annoyed me is that we established in the last episode that Tina is the person that doesn't jump to conclusions. She's the person that's on. She's the one that's keeping everyone on track. And she's the person that says, well, he says he's missing good old New York City water. And I'm like, Tina, you're better than this. Come on. You got this. Figure this out. But eventually they realize that, Ghostwriter sends them a bunch of letters. And then they realize that it's the Veterans Memorial. And this is the scene, like I said, where Gabby and Alex have to convince their dad that the Veterans Memorial is educational.
And it is.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't really think that that's his problem at this point. Because he even says, he's like, that sounds great. We should go tomorrow. I need you in the store today. Dad signed off on them helping Rob find Double T. He's actually met Double T. He knows Double T. He's good with Double T. But, when they walk in and they're like, Papa, we have to go find Double T. He's at the memorial. And he says, I need you in the store today. And their way to fix it is to convince him it's educational. That shouldn't be the fix. That makes no sense. Because it's like the Veterans Memorial. Oh, yeah, they're just going to go there and play. Yeah, that's what you do at the Veterans Memorial.
Right.
I just think that that's ridiculous. It's like, okay.
I mean, and educational or not, would you let your kid go, across to a different borough just to...
Well, I will say they were just there. They were just there.
Yeah.
So I like the problem that they gave them. I don't like the solution.
I mean, it's derivative, but it also it reinforces the education is the most important takeaway from this process. And kids, let your parents know you're learning.
Oh, absolutely.
They'll give you all sorts of privileges.
Absolutely. So I just want to kind of speed through the rest of this. Rob gives us a rendition of his storytelling abilities, and he tells Lisa actually a really good story. The story about the North Wind.
I thought it was good. Yeah.
And honestly, the North Wind is an analog for Ghostwriter, so I thought that was even better. And kind of calms Lisa down. And then at the end of this episode, we get they find Double T. What I love is that they're like, Double T, here you are, and he's like, yeah. It's like they found Double T.
Lost.
He didn't know he was lost, and he explains basically, that he destroyed his stuff, that he's just been having a really hard time, and he had to get away from his family because of the stuff, and now even the freedom that he sought is not feeling like freedom anymore. And you can tell the moment they find him, he looks rough. He's in a bad way. And then he gives his own explanation of how he's been feeling. So now that they've found Double T, now they have to find Rob and Lisa because they're idiots.
Yes. I will say, back to Double T for just a half a second. Mm-hmm. They did not, to my satisfaction, explain why he would break his broom. It's a question that I'm still wondering about.
I think it was just, all of it I think was just a moment of frustration, because he did in the poem say that he felt like his corner was becoming like a prison. And so I think it was just like all of it. Why specifically he would grab his broom and snap it in half doesn't really serve any purpose. But when you're frustrated, sometimes just any act of aggression provides some sort of solace.
I appreciate the depth of analysis that you just gave to that.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not saying it makes sense, but I also have seen angry people do stupider things. So,
absolutely.
Okay. So then at this point, they're basically just trying to find Rob and Lisa. They are getting the words from Rob that Rob is writing in the rocks, but they're trying to let Rob know that they're coming, because one of the first things we find out in this episode, I will say at least we get more of Jamal's dad, because now we actually see a good side of Jamal's dad, him being the helpful. He works with the subway system. Now we see, I'm like, I wish this had come before the asshole bit. Mm-hmm. But, okay. This is part of the main story. That was a subplot. I understand the way it had to be done. It just doesn't set him up the best. But one of the things that he mentions to Jamal is he was like, I wish we could get in contact with them because we want to make sure that they stay put. I guess he's thinking, oh, they must just be lost in the tunnels down there. Obviously, they can't necessarily, they don't even know that that there was a cave-in, that they were, they've only got the words that Rob has sent, which are just, at this point, help, tunnel, and that's it at this point. And old, right. He's trying to write out Old Dodger Stadium, because that's the entrance that they use to get into this part of the tunnel. Which, that's a lot of words. So we do get a scene of Jamal playing word games, trying to figure out what he can say using the letters that Rob has. And so that's like a fun, like, mind teaser thing. It's just to kind of break up the Rob's trapped in a tunnel, he might die situation.
Right.
But yeah, they finally figure that out. And I will say, when Rob gets that information that help is on the way, help sent is what he gets. Uh-huh. And he tells Lisa, and Lisa is like she is, after his story, she's like helping him write words and doing all this stuff. But then he's like, help's on the way. And she's just like, do not give me that shit. That. It's like, this is enough. You're pushing me over the edge.
Right. I'm sure that he appears like a flat earther to her.
Oh, absolutely. He comes off as ludicrous. I mean, he has inside information, but she doesn't have that. She has no reason to have any belief in what he's saying at all. I'm just like, Rob, come on. Eventually they do get the old part of the old Dodger Stadium clue out to the team. They eventually figure it out after, having another awkward moment of, how did you know that? I don't know. And eventually they do recover the kids. I will say there's a moment where the kids are like, no, we have to go help Rob. And rightly so, Jamal's dad is like, you are not going under there. That is dangerous. But then there's a little bit of a fight with it, but he does acquiesce to let Double T go down. And Double T's point is he's like, I know those tunnels, man. I slept in those tunnels.
Right.
But when they get in the tunnels, Double T's like, I don't know where I am. I don't know what's going on. Like, he's more of a liability down there than a help. And I'm just like, oh, man, we're doing Double T dirty now.
Right.
He looks lost. And, like, he starts trying to, like, pull down the rock. And I'm like, whoa, Double T. I mean, he is the one person that's like, oh, there's a vent that we can go to. And that's how they get them out. But up until that point, I'm just like, oh, no, we're just making Double T look like a liability. Why are we doing this?
I mean, everything about the whole search is a little bit of a liability, in all honesty.
Yeah. So eventually, Rob and Lisa come back. Like I said, Double T and Lisa have that really good conversation. Yes. I will say, I was a little disappointed at how quickly Rob's dad got over his anger at Rob, because it was really funny because during the scene where because it actually takes the kids a while to get a hold of Rob's dad, but when he does, in that scene right before Rob walks through the door, he's walking back and forth and he's just like, oh, Rob, this was so stupid. Oh, that was another thing. Before they got a hold of Rob, the team starts having a discussion on how stupid Rob was. And, of course, most of the kids are like, yeah, he was real dumb. But, of course, Alex is like, no, I would have done that too if my friends were in danger. And I'm just like,
that's not good enough, Alex.
Of course you would, Alex. Of course you would. Do not ever trust Alex with anything because he will do the absolute wrong thing.
Alex marches to the beat of a different drummer. Lay off him. Get all the way off of him.
He marches to the beat of a guitar. He doesn't even use a drummer. He marches to the beat of a xylophone. He is so totally off the map.
I am Team Alex, or Team Alex all the way.
Alex, are you? Oh, wow. Good for wow, okay. But, getting back to the Rob thing, before Rob walks through the door, he's pacing back and forth and saying how stupid this was, and they're playing march music underneath this, and I'm just like, oh, wow, okay. Sometimes the music in this is, like, really good. Sometimes it does the right thing to heighten the situation, and sometimes it's just silly. I couldn't really decide which one this was, but it made me giggle. I liked it. But when Rob walks in, his first is, don't you ever do that again? And then it's immediately like, all right, are you okay? And like, I get that, but then he leaves him under the care of someone else and isn't like, you're grounded, by the way, or any, like, I get we're glad he's safe and, he recognizes that he did a stupid thing, but punishment should go along with this, and I think it's important to see that. And we don't really get that. I was a little disappointed by that.
Yeah, although, honestly, that probably happens off camera.
Sure.
Over pizza later on.
Yeah. With Mom, who we don't see. We do know Rob has a mom. She is brought up at different points. But from what I remember, we do not ever meet his mom. So, is there anything else about this story that you wanted to talk about before we get into the rest of our segments?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So, a couple of episodes ago, we started this segment, and I am officially redubbing it Ghostwriter fashion, because as we know, this show took place in the 90s, and it is very 90s. Originally, this segment was kind of to highlight one particular piece of fashion, which was Lenny's hats, because in most episodes, she wears some of the most outrageous hats. Although, in the last couple of episodes, for one reason or another, and I cannot tell you why, she has not had many hats. In the last episode, she only had 2. In this one, she doesn't officially even wear a hat. She wears 2 different types of like headbands.
Yeah.
But that's it. But there are still a couple of fashion things that I did want to bring up, and there are much fewer this time. Last time I had like 12. This time it's only about 5. So real quick, I just want to go ahead and take a look at these. So because this was started for Lenny, for her looks, and honestly, because of her artistic bohemian lifestyle, she has some of the most interesting looks.
This feels like a great nod to shows like Blossom,
Absolutely.
where the characters had really quirky fashion sense,
Sure. I will say Blossom's fashion sense was a bit more girly 90s, whereas Lenny's, while she does definitely have a feminine tone to her, it's much more eclectic. Let me wear the weirdest kind of things while still looking good that I can.
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously we've got to lead off with Lenny's fashion choices. So this first one that we've got is she is wearing an orange bandana. I will say, for a little bit, I actually thought, because her next look also wore an orange bandana, I thought it was the same one. I thought she was wearing the same clothes on 2 different days, and I was like, whoa, after everybody else had changed their clothes, and I was like, what's going on, Lenny? Come on. Is dad not doing laundry? What's going on?
She favors coral and peach.
Yeah. Oh, in these episodes, definitely. In this one, I mean, right now, like I said, she's wearing just a regular like orange bandana with some white patterns on it, and she's sitting down, so you can't really see. It almost looks. She
like
often
a bowling shirt.
Yeah, it is kind of a bowling shirt, but when she stands up, you can actually see there's. I almost want to say Asian patterns, like on that shirt. And what's really funny is that she wears a lot of vests, but it's like for this shirt, the vest is built into the shirt, so she didn't have to. But yeah, let's see the next.
They definitely do not make any of the kids wear age inappropriate clothing.
Oh,
like,
no.
100%. This looks like clothes that a kid who is not being sexualized will wear, and I appreciate that.
I mean, I will say, you will get some form-fitting tops on the girls, but they're never like low cut or gross or anything like that, and they're more just kind of stylish.
Sure.
But so then this look, and this is, like I said, I was confused for a second because I thought that it was the same look as before. It's not that different. I will say I do think she is wearing like a vest in this one.
Yeah, over like a vest over a
an
tank
orange top. Yeah.
And some shorts or something.
Yeah, and it took me a while to realize that that's not the same headband. This one's like a braided.
It is braided.
Yeah, it's like a braided headband. We also have a shot of Alex. I mean, his shorts are interesting. He's wearing gray. It's better than some other looks we've seen him in.
I find that the fashion on TV almost never correlates with fashion in real life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I will say there are some things like, I mean, in one of the pictures we showed last week, like, he literally just looked like he had like gotten out of bed. Like
Alex?
Yeah, he was just wearing like a shirt and a white shirt, or shorts and a white shirt, and Like everybody else was dressed like in an interesting way. And he was just like, hey guys, I got here. I showed up.
He's a t-shirt and gym shorts kind of guy. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean,
Team Alex. Team Alex.
All right. You got a supporter, Alex. I'm sure David Lopez will be thrilled to hear that.
Yes. As well he should.
So the next picture I have is of Tina and her mother. And before I get into this, I'm just going to say there are other photos of Tina in this outfit where it looks better. But this particular photo, it looks frumpy.
Sure.
There was another one that I had of her with, I called him the My Man because, he's the guy that sold the My. And then that one, I will say what she's wearing are like shorts, but in certain angles, it looks like a skirt.
Sure.
And in that, her shirt didn't look like it was eating the skirt. It looked a little bit more evenly tucked. This one, obviously it's mid-action. It's gonna look a little worse.
She's
but
in her character arc of feeling bad, so her shoulders are kind of slumped, and I don't see anything about this, as a single shot without looking at the totality.
She feels bad. Her clothes are feeling frumpy. They'll perk up in a second.
My only question is, what season is this? Because Lenny is wearing short sleeves and sleeveless. Yeah. Her mom is wearing sleeveless, and Tina is wearing full sleeve length. And I'm like, are you not hot in the Brooklyn heat?
Yeah, I will say, like, there is a little bit of inconsistency with that kind of thing. In the last episode, they had a villain. The villain, all he ever wore were sweatshirts, and the rest of the kids were wearing shorts and t-shirts. And I was like, what in the world? Number one, he wore like the same sweatshirt over and over again, so I was like, this guy is not washing his clothes. He must stink. But yeah,
or maybe he has multiples of the same shirt. Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, it might just be a look thing. Because I'm looking at that other photo of Tina, and the sleeves are still rolled down, but like I said, she is wearing shorts. So maybe she just preferred long sleeves for this look, or I mean, obviously costuming probably. Costuming just decided that was better than, short sleeves for this. I don't know. But yeah, no, you have a very good point. I also did kind of, because we see it so little, see the inside of the Nguyen's house. Okay, let's do the Gabby one next. Okay.
You're right. It looks like she's wearing surgical scrubs.
Okay. I included this picture of Gabby for a couple of things. Number one, this is the scene that they have with their dad talking about Double T and whether or not they should help him. Really good scene, but Gabby is obviously wearing a giant unisex shirt. I would say probably like an extra large. She's getting ready to go to bed. That's what she sleeps in.
Look at where her shoulders are like 5 inches above this shoulder seam.
Yeah. But this is something else I wanted to point out. Not only is she wearing an oversized shirt to sleep in, I've seen little girls do that all the time. That's not weird. What's weird about it is that if you notice, like you said, you can see the seam of the shoulder. So this shirt is not only inside out, but if you notice the neckline, it is backwards. There is a scene where she turns around and you can see there is obvious graphic, like inside out graphic on the other side. Whatever that graphic was, either it was like some sort of some advertising that they didn't have, or, something like that. Or in my head, it's an I'm too sexy for this shirt. And they were like, let's not do that.
Right.
Let's not do that. But yeah, whatever. Honestly, I want speculation. What was on this shirt that they had to turn it inside and out and backwards?
But now I think you're right. I mean, who knows? She might have been spouting political slogans that the show was not okay with. Who knows?
I don't know. I mean, this was 93.
Union
it would have
rights.
been right after a presidential election. It could have been union something. I mean, what I'm thinking that it was is that they just didn't have the clearance to show whatever logo or whatever it was. I will say it's like a couple of stripes.
Shirt,
so I think it was some sort of like words. But yeah, I'm like, okay, did she bring this from home and you guys decided this was unusable? Or was this what the costumer picked out for her? But I'm like, also, why did you have to turn it backwards?
Right.
I mean, because she literally, there is a scene where she turns around and we see her back. We see the lettering poking through anyway. We can't see what it says because it's up to her neck. It is choking the poor girl. Why did we turn this? There's a reason shirts aren't supposed to be worn backwards. That's not the way they're cut.
That is funny.
Yeah.
Not only that, but it's like if they didn't like it, there is a closet full of clothes right behind her.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have been that hard to get an extra large T-shirt for her to wear.
The people want to know.
Yeah, yes. Write in. Let me know. What do you think this shirt said? I want to know.
I'm calling the production company.
Do it. Karen's got him on speed dial.
That's right.
All right.
I know all the people.
Okay. So this
the next
last one. Okay. So I included this for one particular reason. Honestly, I think everybody in this looks fine.
I agree. Jamal's fade looks amazing.
Yeah, Jamal. As much as I kind of joke about Jamal being a dork, his fashion is on point. I always love Jamal's
looks
clothes.
nice.
Yeah, always looks great.
The costuming department likes him the best.
They do. Like in the last episode, they had him in this really cool Malcolm X t-shirt, and I was like, "Ooh, wow!" Which is one reason why I'm like, why did they freak out about whatever was on Gabby's shirt? Jamal wore a Malcolm X t-shirt. If that's not going to cause some controversy, my goodness, what's going on? Oh, but the reason that I included this picture is for Lenny's look. And
she's adorable.
Yeah, she looks great. There's nothing wrong with this look. I just think it's very plain and ordinary for Lenny. For the character of Lenny that we have set up, this is one of the most normal outfits I have ever seen her wear.
Well, does it, you've probably watched ahead.
Sure.
Does her fashion sense pop back to the crazy eclectic, or does it kind of start to mature? No,
honestly, there is... Honestly, with the exception of this, because I didn't remember this, and honestly, it's weird because this is the outfit that she wears for the majority of the story, because honestly, they go through like 2 days in the first 2 episodes, but from episode 3 to episode 5, it's all the same day. Yeah. Which is why, Rob and Lisa are in that tunnel for half the story. Yeah, it's just like, honestly, I only remember one outfit looking at and going, whoa, that's not right for Lenny. This one, it's not that it's not right for her. It's just, she usually is very kind of, like I said, bohemian, very interesting, very artistic. And this is, like I said, it doesn't look bad. It's a nice little dress with a flower print on it. Looks good on her.
Yep. It's very cute.
Odd for Lenny. I would have expected, what I would have expected is maybe like some massive bow on the side, or even like I think my real big issue is that this is the first story that I've not seen Lenny wear any sort of hat. And to have her not only not wearing a hat, but then wearing the most kind of ordinary dress I've ever seen her wear.
This might have been a result of the haberdashery boycott of 1992. I don't know.
I mean, I will say, in the episode prior to this kind of hat drought we've had, she literally wore 6 different hats.
Yes.
So I'm thinking that maybe they were like, okay, let's pull back on the hats a little bit and let's kind of even things out. I just feel like, maybe this is where they were like, okay, this is the border. This is the most normal we're ever going to make her look. Now let's kind of get back to Lenny.
Right. Let's lean back into Lenny's look.
Yeah. I just found it interesting that, it says something when the most ordinary look on the show is the one that makes you go, that looks weird.
Yeah, right.
But yeah. So those are the pictures. So now that we have done that, we just have a couple more segments before we're ready to finish this out, Karen. So real quick, who is your top suspect? This would be the character in the episode that was your favorite, or you thought was doing the best job, or just was having the most fun, or whatever. In your opinion, who was your top suspect?
Okay, let me think a little bit about this. Honestly, I'm going to go with Tina's mom.
Tina's mom, okay.
Because I appreciated that story, and it made me see her as much more than just a common mom figure. And I appreciated it, and I appreciated the relationship that she had with her daughter and telling that story, and the resulting care that her daughter took to make her mom happy.
Yeah, I really liked that storyline, not only for, we finally got to meet her parents, we finally got to see where she lives, we got a bit more backstory for Tina, but we also, they didn't just ignore, that she's Vietnamese, she's from Vietnam, her mother grew up there, they really kind of went in depth with that, and her mom was a huge part of that. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I like
That's
that.
my pick.
Okay, so mine, first of all, I want to give honorable mention to David Patrick Kelly as Double T. He's been great in these past 2 episodes, and he just did a great job kind of, making Double T likable, but also kind of showing the darkness and the hard time that he is having with this situation. Like I said, I probably would have given it to him if Grandma Jenkins hadn't had the best scene in the whole story arc. So I gotta give this to Marcella Lowry as Grandma Cece Jenkins, because Grandma's got a boyfriend and she stands up for herself.
As well as she should.
Absolutely. She is the best, and, just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that. So she is my top suspect for this episode. So then, with that being said, Karen, what is your rewind moment of the episode? A scene that you thought either was just really good, or a moment that just made you go, what?
Honestly, it was the crawling into the subway. Like, I know it's the plot.
Yeah.
But I just look and I'm like,
so dumb.
Are you so that dumb?
Yes.
And where are the rats?
Yes.
Where is the verisimilitude of an actual New York subway? Because I was not there.
Yeah, and also the fact that Rob had some really good points to Lisa, and she fought for this really stupid idea.
Yep.
I'm just like, geez. Yeah, no, that one's good. Mine, okay, it literally is a moment. It's a series of moments, because when I watched this, the first time I was rewatching this series, the scene with the guard at the shelter, he's sitting there and he's reading a magazine. I think a lot of times he's asleep and he's got it on his face. If you look at the magazine, every single one of those magazines, they're all wrestling magazines. And it's like, it's almost always a different one. I know one of them was Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and one was just called like Wrestler. But I mean, for an old school wrestling fan like myself, like that really popped out to me. Like one of them actually has Ultimate Warrior on the cover, and I'm just like, wow. The fact that they like used that, I'm like, yeah, I can see that this guy's into wrestling. I go with that. Doesn't do his job very well, kind of a layabout. Yeah, I get that.
Right? That's delightful.
Yeah.
It's the little things.
Oh yeah, it gave me joy, and honestly, it literally was like the whole meaning of a rewind moment, because I literally stopped, went back, and was like, was that what I thought it was? Yes, it was. All right, so then just a series of questions for you, Karen. First of all, if Ghostwriter were real and he wrote to you, would you write back? And if you would, what would you say?
I mean, like, let's face it. We're on our computers and devices so much right now, writing so many things to people that we don't know are actual, real bots,
Sure.
Russian infiltrators. Who knows? So 100%, I would write back to him as long as it remained fun.
Sure. And what
now,
would
if he
you
wrait
say?
something creepy like "I know what you're wearing," then I'd be like,
I don't think Ghostwriter would do that. But
maybe Ghostwriter After Dark.
Yeah. But so then the question would be, what would you say to him, knowing what he is?
Well, I don't know what he is. Do you know what Ghostwriter is?
We're gonna get to that. What I mean is knowing what you know of Ghostwriter.
Oh.
In that way.
Yeah.
Like what would you say to him? Would you ask him a question? Would you tell him a joke?
I would ask him a question.
Okay.
I would write to him and ask him to look at Donald Trump's tax returns and give us the truth.
Oh, that is a good one. Oh, I can't believe that you are the first person. And we have just informed
your entire listening audience of what my persuasion is.
I've made it rather obvious. It's fine. Honestly, I am shocked that you are the first person that would use Ghostwriter to look in on. Of course. I can't believe nobody else has thought of that. That would be brilliant. Oh, jeez. If anyone could bring down Donald Trump.
What are you, Ghostwriter? We need Ghostwriter is the person
we
that
need
we need
him
right
so
now.
bad.
Where are you, Ghostwriter? Hey, did you see that there is another Ghostwriter? Is it like there's a reboot?
Yeah. There actually have been 2 different versions after this original version. I think they tried to bring it back on CBS like a year after it went off the air on PBS, but they changed it and made it completely different, had a new set of kids. And
I mean,
they
put in Jennifer Love Hewitt and it was Ghost Whisperer. But.
Oh, well, yeah. But that one only lasted 1 season. This new one, I haven't looked a lot into it, but from what I have seen, it's completely different. They're not really even... It's not really about solving mysteries. It's more about literature and going inside of actual literary stories.
Wow.
So he's more of like a magical being than he is, what he was in this show. But with that being said, with what you have gathered from what you've seen, who or what would you guess Ghostwriter is?
I am 100% certain
that
Ghostwriter is the future iteration of Jamal at a much, much later date in time where he uploads his consciousness to the AI. And the artificial intelligence that is Jamal gets lost in time, comes back, and starts speaking to himself. So I think that's exactly what that is. I would lay money on it.
All right. That is another really good take, a really good guess. All right. Well, with that being said, the identity of Ghostwriter was never actually revealed on the show. It was hinted, and in fact, we didn't really mention it, but in this episode, we did mention that, Rob likens him to the Northwind in his story, but also Ghostwriter really kind of jives with Double T's poem, the To the Light, kind of the feeling lost, feeling, having those types of feelings. And so they kind of, drew a parallel between them. And so this is one of those stories that actually gives us some ideas of Ghostwriter's personality. And there were stories here and there that would give us, hints or clues. And the idea, I believe, was that eventually they would reveal it, but they never did. They didn't get there. However, a writer and producer did eventually give an interview where he revealed Ghostwriter's identity. I feel like this is an obvious question, but do you want to know?
Of course I want to know.
Okay. All right. So, in 2010, Ghostwriter producer and writer Kermit Frazier revealed in an interview that Ghostwriter was...
Wow.
Yeah.
This is incredibly timely.
Mm-hmm.
For, ahead of its time in many respects, but it feels like a lot of things in 2020 that it is the right information at the right time. And dang, I wish that could have been more of a feature throughout the show.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is the point in the show where we let you know how you can get into contact with us. And it is super easy because I am the Flying Cowpod on just about everything, at the Flying Cowpod on Twitter and Instagram, theflyingcowpod@gmail.com. Send in your letters. Let me know what you think was on Gabby's t-shirt that caused them to turn it around and make it inside out. Let me know what you think of the show, all that good stuff. You can also contact me on Facebook. It's just The Flying Cow. It's a group. Fun stuff. But with that being said, Karen, I want to give you the opportunity, if there is anything that you would like to share, anything that you would like to let people know that you are enjoying in pop culture. And as an added bonus, if you have anything to share that uplifts the voices of women or people of color, that would be awesome.
Well, I 100% would share. I love horror stories, etc., and have been watching Lovecraft Country, which is definitely not for children, but is
No.
Quite an impactful story. And if you have an opportunity, you should listen to the podcast for each of the episodes. I think it's called Lovecraft Country Radio. And it's from one of the writers of the show, and then another person. I don't remember how she fits into this, but it's a great podcast. It dissects the themes of the show. And again, talk about things, Watchmen last year and Lovecraft Country this year. Yeah. There are stories that need to be told that, for myself as a cis hetero white woman, I need to take a look at a whole lot of things and get angry about a lot more and, start being part of the solution. So listen, understand, believe, and let's unify the country, not by keeping our mouths shut, but by speaking out against injustice and not settling for less.
Yep, absolutely. And I will say this has got to be a really good show because you're the second guest in a row to talk about this show. But I love the addition of the podcast. That is great. And you want me to blow your mind for a second? Because Watchmen was this year. That's how long this year has been.
You mean it wasn't last decade?
I know, right? Oh. I mean, if it had been last year, it would have been last decade. But yeah.
I guess technically it would. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. But, okay, so for my plug, in honor of the late, great Chadwick Boseman, I want to suggest two of his movies. The first one from this year, Spike Lee's Da 5 Bloods. You can find it on Netflix. It is a really good film. If you just explain the basic plot, it's basically just about five black soldiers who were in Vietnam, and they get together to find their friend who perished in the war and go on a treasure hunt. But because it's Spike Lee, it's so much better than that. And there is so much more. I mean, obviously it's going to explore race. It's going to explore racism. It's going to explore, it's Spike Lee. So it's not going to be, he's going to be in your face with what he thinks, but it's not going to just be silly and fun. He's going to make you think. And Chadwick Boseman is great in that movie. I mean, obviously Delroy Lindo has been getting a lot of talk from that movie, but Chadwick Boseman is equally as, I mean, really, he sets off the whole film. He sets off the whole thing. So that's a great one to check out if you haven't already. And another one, great film from him is Get On Up. Chadwick Boseman played James Brown, biopic from 2014. It is on HBO Max, and it's another one. It's it's probably one of the more dynamic biopics that I've seen in a while. Way better than Bohemian Rhapsody, and for some reason didn't get any Oscar noise at all, which is ridiculous. But yeah, another great one to check out if you haven't seen. All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Karen, for being here today. It's been great to have you on the podcast.
I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate, even in the land of pandemic.
Absolutely. So, with that being said, we will be back next time. We actually get a Tina-centric episode. Can you imagine that? Yes.
I may have to continue watching.
Yes, and an old school actress is in danger for the next story, Who's Who. So you'll have to come back and listen to us talk about that one. But for now, we'll see you later. Ghostwriter out.
Bye.
Bye. Grandma's got a boyfriend, and her boyfriend's name is Bertrand. That's all I got.